Hello, everybody. Today I will be presenting the extent to which the dropout rates amongst the Hispanic group in Miami-Dade County can be attributed to family situation. Why I chose this topic? I chose this topic because as a student, I wanted a topic that I could really dive deep into and do a really in-depth analysis and make it actually usable in the world today. And as a student, I felt that the easiest field to do this in would be the field of education and the study of students and my colleagues like myself. Now, why I chose specifically Hispanic students is because me myself, I am a Hispanic student, and I wanted to do a research study on people like me in my community because I felt that there haven't really been many studies done in to observe and analyze my group of people. And as I soon realized that is the case when I did my research and conducted research to find sources and support for my paper and my argument, I found that this was the case and there really isn't many studies done in this field, so that's why I wanted to conduct this research. Now, the environment, before we get into the main research, I wanted to talk about the environment in Miami-Dade County. Unlike many counties in the U.S., there is a majority Hispanic community here in Miami-Dade County. This is very rare from counties in the United States, and usually Hispanic and African American groups are always a minority to white Americans. But as you can see here in this graph, straight from the U.S. Census, it shows that 64% of the residents in Miami-Dade County are Hispanic or have Hispanic descent, which is a huge difference from many other counties in the United States. The only place that rivals these numbers would be Texas, since they are bordering the Mexican border. But other than that, there are no other counties even close. I think the closest other than that would be about 15%. But that's not even close. We're a majority here in Miami-Dade County, which is very rare. Now, I decided to tackle the topic of Hispanic students and dropout rates by conducting a research on how being a single-parent household student can negatively affect your academic success in Miami-Dade County. Now, I wanted to focus on single-parent household students because me, myself, I know a few people who only have one parent, and to me, through my observation and my daily life, I've seen that these kids struggle a little bit more than everybody else might. And I wanted to conduct a survey to see if this was the case as a majority and if a lot of Hispanic students are suffering from this same problem. And of course, I wanted to focus on Hispanic high school students since in Miami-Dade County, of course, we are a majority, like I just said. And that me, myself, as a Hispanic student, I felt connected to the Hispanic group of students, and I wanted to conduct this research study. Now, the gap to my research question is the specific study of students with single-parent family homes in the Hispanic high school student group in Miami-Dade County. Now, basically, when I conducted research, I wanted to see if there were studies done similar to mine, and through thorough investigation and looking through hundreds of sources, I realized that there haven't really been many studies done on specifically single-parent families home high school students, and even less single-parent family home Hispanic high school students. And the only real thing that people looked at in detail would be the idea of how, like, social things like not having money or not having counseling. Those research studies have been done. But when looking specifically at how parent and family situation affects high school students and Hispanic high school students, it opens up a gap that I hope to fill with my research. Also, in Miami-Dade County, there haven't really been many scholarly researches done or studies. So I wanted to conduct one to see if maybe I could fill that gap too with this research. Now my method, I chose the case study method. Now the case study method is when you specifically look at a group of people and see how something you introduce or something that's already in place affects that group of people. And for me, of course, while looking at Hispanic students in Miami-Dade County and in these different high schools, I wanted to see how parent situation and only having one parent figure can affect them. So obviously, when looking through the methods and trying to decide which one would fit my research best, I decided to choose the case study method because of my in-depth analysis on this group of people and how this thing affects this specific group of people. Now, why the case study? In addition to what I just said, when conducting my research, all studies done in the field of education concerning students use the case study. Now, this is not a joke. When I was looking through my different sources, when using EMSCO and all these different scholarly websites, every single study that had to do with students and something to do with analyzing them and how something affects them, all of them use the case study method. For example, Magnus Lofstrom's Why Are Hispanic and African Americans Dropout Rates So High? He does a case study analysis on specifically Hispanic and African American students and analyzes why their dropout rates might be so high. And he came to the conclusion that it could be because of lack of experience in this country and lack of support when it comes to social factors, but that's beside the point. And also another major study that uses the case study that I used to kind of shape my study was Robert Balfan's Locating the Dropout Crisis in the United States, which he basically goes to specific high schools with the highest dropout rates in the United States and does a study on these students and sees why these dropout rates are exactly so high. So those two studies are two of the major reasons why I decided to use the case study method. Now, when using the case study method, there's many choices that you could use with instruments. And the main instrument I decided to use was the survey. I wanted to use the survey because from the beginning, even before choosing my topic, I knew I wanted to conduct a survey to get really in-depth and to see the true reality of my topic. And when I decided to do something with education, I knew that the survey would be the best because I could administer a survey to other students around me. And my survey was inspired by the Stanford Survey of Adolescent School Experiences and the Panorama Education's Family School Relationships Survey. Now, the Stanford Survey of Adolescent School Experiences, I use this survey to shape mine because this survey is a well-used and scholarly survey, and it asks questions to students. And I wanted to make these same questions and ask them to students as well, and make the questions student friendly and make them easy to answer, because sometimes students can not understand a question and that could ruin your results. So I wanted to make sure that my questions were shaped perfectly. And the Panorama Education's Family School Relationships Survey, that survey helped me shape my survey in the way that I was asking questions on family situation and very personal things like your academic success rate and other things like that. So I wanted to use a scholarly survey to see how to shape my questions to make them accurate and make them non-biased, and to make sure that they were clear and to make the person answering it feel comfortable when answering these questions. Now, before I administered the survey, my hypothesis was that yes, it would have I would see some students that would struggle because of single parent situation and that it would be a problem, but that many students wouldn't, and that it would maybe be like certain students who needed help with this, but the majority of the Hispanic group didn't need help with this. And at the beginning, I wanted to tackle this just to help that specific group of people. But as I soon came to find out, the issue was much larger than I first anticipated. Now the survey, when looking at the results of my survey, I distributed 200 surveys to 200 students, and I distributed the survey in two major high schools in Miami-Dade County. Now, these two are major high schools in Miami-Dade County that have a lot of students in them, and I just decided that these two would maybe be the best to get the different demographics from Miami-Dade County. And I made the survey anonymous to ensure privacy and motivate people to answer it. Because when a student comes up to you and asks you to answer a survey on personal questions like family situation and how you're doing in school, a student might get turned off and not want to answer the survey. So I wanted to make sure that I stressed that it was anonymous, and I stressed that your privacy was ensured, so that I could get as many answers as I can to the survey and get the best results I possibly could. Now for my results, 84% of students who answered the survey were Hispanic, which is great because my question tackles specifically Hispanic students, and I wanted to look at specifically the Hispanic students in Miami-Dade County. And I knew that I would get a lot of Hispanic students, but I thought that I would have a big chunk that weren't. But I only had about 40% of students that weren't, so it was a good amount. I had 168 students that I could work with to shape my results. And of these Hispanic students, 25% of these students also lived in single-parent households. Now, this number actually surprised me because that means that 1 in 4 Hispanic students that I surveyed live in single-parent households. That's a quarter, which is 42 students out of the 168, which that's just crazy to me. I thought it would be about 10%, maybe a little bit less, but 25%, that is a huge amount of the students if we look at the whole Hispanic population of students as a whole. And when looking at I wanted to measure academic success. And to measure academic success, the first question of my survey was to write down your GPA. I used the GPA to kind of just shape how good you're doing in school, because if a person has a high GPA, they're obviously doing well in school and they're performing well on tests and other things in their academic life. So the average GPA for students that are going into college and graduating is 3.01, and this is proven by many different sources. And in my survey, the average GPA for the Hispanic students was actually 3.11, which is very unexpected. I thought it would be lower, but it was actually ended up being higher, which was a great thing. But the problem came when looking at, it kind of didn't make sense, because before I looked at these results, I looked at this, which is a table straight out of Miami-Dade Public Schools database, which shows the graduation rates for both, like, each ethnicity. And for the Hispanic graduation rate, it's only 72%, while the white graduation rate, is at 82%, which is 10% more than the Hispanic graduation rate, which is a big number of students when you look at the amount of students that there are. 10% may seem like nothing, or may seem like it's not that much, but when you're looking at the amount of students that we have in these schools, 10% of like 100,000 is a lot of students. Now, when looking at these two tables right here, I looked at the GPAs for both single-parent students and both parent students, and I wanted to compare how these tables would look. And as you can see, the table on the left shows the GPAs for students with above a 3.0, which is the average for students who who are going to graduate, presumably. And it shows that only 60% of students had above a 3.0 GPA, which is only about half, which is really concerning when it comes to think that there's 25% of students who have single-parent homes, and only half of these 25% have a 3.0 or above, which is the normal normal GPA to graduate. And then you look at the other table, which is both parent students, and it's a huge increase to about 75%, which is a lot different from about 50%. And that shows that there's really is a problem when it comes to the difference between both parent students and only single parent students. Now, where this problem arises, I think, has to do with how supported the student is at home. When you look at the results here, single parent Hispanic students, 84% of them, when answering a question on my survey, said that they don't feel supported from home or from their counseling in school. And that's a huge number of the students. When we think about that, about 25% of these students are single parent Hispanic students, and that 84% of these students don't feel supported. That's a lot of students that don't feel supported and aren't motivated to succeed in school, which can in turn show why our results are the way they are and why these are so much lower than both parent students. And in contrary to that, for both parent students, 54% of students said they felt supported, to contrary to only 16% in the other side, which is a huge amount of students that feel supported. Now, this is obviously a big problem, because when students don't feel supported, they obviously don't feel that they should try or strive for greatness in school and academia. So that in turn drops their success rate and drops how they do in school, which in turn shows why my results are the way they are. Now, there's one possible solution to this that I thought was the best possible solution to fix this problem. And that is the main thing that schools can do to fix this problem could be to increase counseling to students that aren't feeling supported at home. Now, by that, I mean obviously increase counseling to students who maybe only have one parent or struggle with doing great in school, and increase the counseling to them to help them feel supported and help them create a base of support so that they can strive and then achieve excellence in school. And in turn, students nowadays already feel like counseling is not as good as it should be. So increasing counseling can only benefit other topics like mental health and other things for other groups of students, not just the Hispanic group. And there is a negative to this solution, and the only negative is that schools would have to increase spending on counseling. But seeing as to how this increased counseling can fix so many other problems, I don't think this is a big deal, and it's money well spent. Now, the limitations to my research are that survey bias. Now, survey bias, this can happen with any survey. Now, this is a very personal survey, and giving it out to groups of students, you're next to your friends, you might not want to answer correctly, and you might want to change your results a bit. You might want to lie about your GPA, you don't know. So survey bias is always going to be there, and that could be one limitation to my survey. Now, struggle to get students to participate. Now, this was big because as an AP research student, I went around to these two major high schools asking other students to answer my survey, and when they would look at it and see all the personal questions, a lot wouldn't feel comfortable with me, even though the survey is anonymous, because they don't know who I am, and they might not believe me when I say I'm an AP research student. So there was a struggle to get some students to participate, but I was able to get 200 students, and it in turn did work out. And of course, another limitation is that I only got 200 participants. Of course, if this was a perfect research, I could have gotten every Hispanic student in Miami-Dade County, and that would have made this research perfect. But I think that the results still would have been the same, and the implication and everything that I've discussed would still be the same, and the solution would still be the same. So that's not that bad. Now, in conclusion, through my research, I was able to evaluate that family situation has a huge effect on how a Hispanic student will perform in high school. And I reached the conclusion that the way to solve this problem is to increase counseling and support to these students so that they can build a solid foundation and get the support and everything that they need to help strive for excellence and raise these bad or poor maybe grades and GPAs. Thank you.